Good morning, everybody. Just hope you have a fantastic Wednesday today. And here goes our devotion for this Wednesday morning. We've been looking at Genesis 16, the story of Hagar. She ran into the wilderness as she was pregnant, and she arrived at a beautiful little spring and met with God in the most significant way. And God came to her with two questions. He said, "Where have you come from? And where are you going?" You see, she had run away from the mess and the misery of her life back with Abraham and with Sarah. And so she confronts this situation head on and has to answer those two very specific questions. But we've been talking about the nature of human beings to get into trouble. And we've looked at the contributing factors of humanity. We're not taking responsibility and all of those things. But there's a second factor, and one of the greatest and biggest human factors that we face today is the desire for self-gratification, for self-satisfaction. It's all about the self. Now the world, if you look out there, is obsessed with the self. You go on self-development courses, you get self-improvement books, you talk about self-esteem, you talk about self-helps, you talk about all these we talk about rights for self. Everybody wants rights for their self, and we've become obsessed with ourselves. Now, this is not what a biblical thing should look like. But I read some interesting trivia the other day, and it was entitled "The Day America Told the Truth," and I think this is applicable to probably all human beings. It's just a trivia thing, where they said, "What would you do for $100,000? And the statistics came up saying that 7% of people for $100,000 would murder somebody. 6% said they would change their race. 4% said that they would change their gender. 25% said they would abandon their family. 25% said that they would leave their church. 16% said that they would leave their spouse. And 3% said they would give up their kids for adoption. The things that people will do to be happy and to have their self-satisfaction. Now, this is not unusual. I'm not so how accurate that trivia is, but what they could sort of say something. But it's always been true, hasn't it? Adam and Eve, they sold fellowship with God for a lie. They wanted to be self-satisfied. Esau sold his birthright, his inheritance, for a pot of stew. Judas sold friendship with Jesus for 30 pieces of silver. And we see how much trouble our desire for self-gratification can get us into. The Apostle Paul has the answer for us. The Apostle Paul in the book of Romans says there's only one good self, and that is a dead one. Now you, if you come to our church, will have heard me say that a number of times, because the self has to die. Paul puts it like this. He says, offer yourself as a living sacrifice. There's only one good sacrifice, people, and it's a dead one. While that sacrifice is still alive, there's nothing happening at all that's good. Jesus spoke, the book of Mark, a number of times in the Gospels. He said, if you want to follow me, take up your cross and follow me. Now, we all know that the cross is an item of torture. It's an item of death. And Jesus is saying, as much as he took up his cross to die, so too, in a spiritual sense, do we have to. We take up our cross to follow him. So maybe today, as you begin this day, won't you have a look at your own life and say, am I carrying my cross? Because in a pictorial form, I have a picture of Jesus on the cross and him crying out, now I've died and I've carried my cross. You too have to carry yours. So maybe you've left your cross behind. Go back to his cross and pick yours up, because there's a cross with your name on it. And it's the cross of dying to self. It's the cross of coming alive to God, taking on God's objective, God's purpose, and God's dream and God's vision. Not yours. Yours doesn't count anymore. And as believers, this is at the end of the day what makes our Christian faith authentic and real, is when we die to our own agenda, we die to our own vision and our own purposes, and we take on that of Christ.